Hello, welcome to my channel. You're watching What Helen Reads. I'm Helen and today I've got another Mafia Romance Monday recommendations video for you. I absolutely love a Mafia romance, so love doing my Mafia Romance Monday videos on the second Monday of every month. Now, I always try to theme these in some way because it helps me kind of collate recommendations that I want to share with you, and I've done various kind of themes, topics, subgenres, tropes in the past, and today what I'm going to be talking about is mafia bosses. So these are mafia romances that feature the mafia boss and his romance with his heroine. Now, you might think these are fairly common, and they are. Obviously, a lot of mafia romance do feature the boss, if you like, but also quite a lot of mafia stories also feature, you know, the bodyguards, the enforcers, the consigliers, the second in command, whatever. There's a whole mix of different types of romances. So today I'm going to focus on some of my favourite romances with bosses, and then for upcoming videos I then thought I'd also cover some other roles in the mafia and pull out, you know, maybe some recommendations about enforcers, recommendations about bodyguards and so on, and we'll see how we get on with that. But today, like I say, we are talking bosses, and the first one I want to talk about is Gabriel, who is a Turkish mafia boss, and he is in Stolen by a Sinner by Michelle Hurd. This book is book 3 of her Sinner series, and like I said, we are following Gabriel and the heroine is Lara in this one. So, like I said, this is a Turkish mafia romance. It's age gap and capped captive, and there's some caretaking in here as well. Now, Gabriel's backstory is that he came to America with his family. His family owned a bakery, and you know, were trying to make ends meet, but they had to pay obviously some protection money to a local mafia family. In fact, it was a Polish family, and the head of this Polish family was Mazus. Now, of course, when they couldn't afford to pay, Mazus had them killed, and so Gabriel then determined that the rest of his life he was going to work his way up in the Turkish mafia ranks and eventually take his revenge on his Polish mafia rival Mazus. So they have a long-standing rivalry between them. Now, meanwhile, our heroine Lara, she actually works for Mazus because her mum worked for him. She was born into his household, obviously had to live in the household for you know, all her life, and when her mum passes away, she's then expected to step up and kind of be one of the housekeepers. Now, Mazus is not too good to his employees, and obviously they're all forced to be there. They're pretty much slaves, and so he is quite abusive towards them as well, and Lara is very scared of him. Now, one day she is sent out to get him some oysters, I think, from a local shop, and as she's coming out of the store, she happens to bump into Gabriel. She spills basically the dinner, which means she has to go back into the shop to get some more, and she's very panicked and afraid because she knows that she's going to be late now, and Mazus is not going to be too happy about it. Of course, Gabriel bumps into her, doesn't realise who she is at first, and they have a bit of a meet cute, but she obviously goes on her way, and Gabriel thinks no more about it until, like, that night, the next day, something like that, Gabriel is enacting his plan to kind of like raid Mazuz's house to try and take him out. And obviously when he goes into the house, he bumps back into Lara because she's the housekeeper there, and she kind of gets caught in the crossfires and ends up being shot and injured. Now, Gabriel thinks that Lara was put into his path earlier in the day in some way to trick or trap him, and so he's very suspicious of her, but obviously she's injured. She did get in the way. They didn't manage to kill the head of the Polish mafia. He managed to escape, but he decides then he's going to take Lara captive and hostage for himself, nurse her back to health, but also with the intention of interrogating her to find out what she knows. And it's not too long, of course, till he realises that she's completely innocent in all of this, and then decides that he's going to take care of her for himself. But obviously the bad dude in this one is going to come back, and Gabriel is going to then want to protect Lara and ultimately figure out that he's fallen in love with her. So I really enjoyed that one and definitely recommend. In fact, I really liked that whole series by Michelle Hurd. So next up I've got Unchosen Ruler by Maggie Cole. This is book 6 in the Mafia Wars series, and we are following Liam and Hayley in this one. So obviously it's book 6, but this is book 1 in the O'Malley family part. So the first 5 books in this series focus on the Ivanovs, and now the second 5 will focus on the O'Malley family. So they're all obviously interconnected. We kind of know about this family before now, but up until now Liam has actually been in prison because he went to prison for quite some time, like 10-15 years, something like that, but he's finally out of prison now. He's second in command of the Irish Mafia in Chicago, and his father is you know, dying of lung cancer, and so he is going to need to step up. So this is why it's called Unchosen Ruler. He really doesn't want to obviously take over from his dad. He doesn't want his dad to pass away, obviously, but very soon into this book Liam steps up and becomes the boss. He becomes in charge of this Irish family, and of course he's got a lot to prove because he's been in prison for a while. One of the reasons he went to prison because he was a bit of a hothead, made some bad decisions, and now he needs to prove that he's a changed person, that he's capable of leading this Irish family. Of course, when he first comes out of prison, he is going to meet the group of women that have been in the first 5 books. So Aspen and her friends. One of the friendship group is a woman called Hayley. She's a sweet, innocent school teacher, and you know, she goes to the O'Malley pub basically for its new opening. Liam comes out of prison, he happens to be there, he sees Hayley and falls in love with her pretty much straight away, and then starts to try and convince her to go out with him. The thing is, like I say, she is a sweet, innocent school teacher, and she's a little bit scared of him. You know, she knows he's a bad guy, she knows he's just come out of prison, and so she is obviously a little bit reluctant at first, but very quickly Liam, you know, convinces her with his charms that they really should be together. The thing is, this is also a little bit of a case of a surprise identity, because Hayley is not who she thinks she is. In fact, she has got some connections herself to a mafia family, and this may cause some problems for this couple, and also put Hayley in some danger, and Liam's going to have to step up to the plate to try and figure it all out and rescue the woman that he loves. But I really enjoyed this, and Liam ends up being a great ruler for his Irish family, and would definitely recommend. Next up I've got The Director by Renee Rose, and this is a Russian mafia story. So obviously this guy is the Pakan of the Bratva. Again, I think it's actually in Chicago, this one. So Chicago have got a lot of mafia families going on when you read all these romances. Literally, I don't think anyone else lives in Chicago but mafia families. Anyway, this is book 1 in the Chicago Bratva series. It's also a secret baby, a one-night stand in a sex club, and we're following Lucy and Ravil. So Ravil is the director, the head of this Russian mafia basically, and he happens to be in New York for some meetings, and he is a dominant and so often goes to a sex club while he's in New York. When he goes there, he meets Lucy. She is a submissive, she's also a lawyer, and they kind of get matched up together, and they have a fantastic night together. As a result of this night together, she ends up becoming pregnant. But when she finds out she's pregnant, she chooses not to go and tell Ravil because for a couple of reasons. One, when they met in the sex club, they didn't reveal each other's names, so they don't actually know who each other is. However, she could find out if she wanted to. She could just, you know, contact the club, and they would tell. She would be able to get their information, or a message to him at least, because he's a member there. But she chooses not to, because she also knows that although they spent an amazing night together, she also recognised some of the tattoos on his body, and pretty much figures out quite quickly that he is in fact in the Bratva, and so she's not too sure that this kind of man would be make a great father figure, shall we say. The thing is, a bit later in this story they meet again, because like I said at the start, she's a lawyer, and she ends up getting asked to kind of defend somebody else that's in the Bratva and one of Ravil's men. And so he goes to kind of meet her and discuss the case with her. Then obviously once they meet and see each other, they realise who each other is. By this time, her pregnancy is pretty obvious. Her, you know, her belly is big enough that she's now showing. And he kind of does the quick calculation in his head, figures out that he's the father, and then is completely enraged when he realises that she's kept his baby from him. And then he decides he's obviously going to take her captive and secure her in his penthouse apartment, originally with the intention of, until the baby's born, he's going to take it off her. But then obviously, but now they're in close proximity, they do have great chemistry together, and so slowly but surely they are going to start a relationship. Yeah, really enjoyed that one. So next up we have The Tallest Tower by Emilia Finn. This is book 1 in the Underbelly Enchanted series, and we are following Felix, who's head of his mafia family, and Christabel. Now this is kind of enemies to lovers sort of tale, reverse Grumpy Sunshine, captive situation, and there's also some care taken in this one as well. Now this book does start with a pretty terrifying, horrific first couple of chapters, because Felix's dad, who obviously was the original head of this mafia family, was an extremely evil man, and he was extremely horrible to women in particular. He would mistreat them, get them pregnant, and then once they'd had their babies, and in fact what he was doing was trying to breed sons because he wanted to create his own army of sons, he would then dispose of the women and bring his sons up without mothers. So basically Felix is one of 5. None of them know their mothers because they were obviously removed from the situation, and each one of them kind of had to you know, fend for themselves, but also growing up they were very close as well, and kind of did what they could to protect each other from their father. And so at the start of this book we kind of have we witness one of the terrible things that he does to one of the mothers, and so we learn a bit of backstory about how this happens. Now eventually they're able to kind of overthrow the father. Felix takes control, so he's now the boss of this organisation. He wants to change things, but he also wants to try and figure out who you know, who the mums are, and figure out what happened to them. Also digging around is Christabel, our heroine. She is a reporter. In fact, she is kind of like the daughter of the person that owns the newspaper, like this media company. She's very rich and powerful, but like I say, she's also a reporter, and she starts digging around into Felix's business, trying to figure out some things for herself as well, bring down the family essentially, and uncover all of the secrets. Of course, Felix is not going to take this lying down, and he decides he's going to kidnap her and keep her captive to try and shut her up. Of course, as soon as he's got her in his clutches, he realises he's made a bit of a mistake, because this is only going to make the situation worse. He's only got really 2 choices. One, to make her fall in love with him so that she won't want to share his secrets, or he's going to have to eliminate her from the situation. Now, one of the things in here is that Christabel is actually diabetic. She doesn't tell him though, and obviously because her food is not maintained the way it should be, she ends up having quite a bad reaction, and you know, it takes seriously ill. And when Felix realises what's going on, he then contacts his sister-in-law, who happens to be a character from the May Justice series that Emilia Finn has, and is kind of a coroner, but does obviously have some doctor skills, and he calls her and asks her to come and basically nurse Christabel back to life. And of course she is not going to be too, like the sister-in-law is not going to be too happy about this. It's severely stern with Felix, and also by this time he realises that he's got feelings for Christabel, so things are going to have to they're going to try and have to figure things out to see how they're going to resolve their issues. But I read this at the start of the year, really enjoyed this one, and would definitely recommend. Next up then, I have another recommendation, and it's a book I read recently, His Tesoro by Emilia Rossi. So this is book 1 in the Empire of the Royals series. Emilia Rossi has not written too many books. This is her first mafia romance as far as I'm aware, and I absolutely loved it. So would definitely recommend, if you want to start a new series, I'd definitely pick this up, because I'm expecting more great things from her in the future. So this is essentially an arranged marriage story. It's an age gap. We've got disability representation in here as well, and this is the uniting of two mafia families, an Italian mafia family and a Russian family. So in here we have Sofia, who is a Russian mafia princess, and Matteo, who is in charge of the Italian mafia. Now, he needs to form an alliance with the Russian family, and so he agrees to get married to Sofia, and he does so without ever having met her or even seen a picture of her or anything like that, because he goes into this thinking it doesn't matter, it's just an arranged marriage, it's going to be in name only, she'll come and live with me but in a completely separate room, we can live completely separate lives, I'm just doing it for business. And so that's what he thinks. So when he turns up in Chicago to marry Sofia, he is a little bit startled to find that she's coming down the aisle in a wheelchair, because Sofia does suffer from a condition, and I can't remember the name of it, but it basically means that she has very kind of like weak and unstable joints, so she can physically walk but it's difficult for her too. She's in a lot of pain, and she has to be really, really careful with what she does, so she has kind of like walking aids, and on her wedding day she just happens to need to use a wheelchair. Now what we find out is that her father, who is, you know, head of the Russian mafia, he sees this very much as a weakness. He's very ashamed of his daughter, has kept her kind of locked away, he's not treated her very well at all, and is really trying to just palm her off on Matteo. And so it's really, really sort of sad kind of the way she's been treated and how her father has treated her. Now she's really, really concerned that Matteo is going to think the same thing and not treat her very well. But actually, Matteo surprises her. Doesn't necessarily surprise us. We know he's going to be a sweet guy, right? But reacts to this absolutely brilliantly. So he doesn't care one jot that she is in a wheelchair. What he does care about, though, is why she's coming down the aisle on her own, why her father is so horrible to her, and he really then develops this real soft spot for Sofia right out the gate. However, he's not going to let her disability change his mind. As far as he's concerned, he's not going to fall in love with her. He's going to treat her right, obviously, but he is going to keep his distance, and she can come and live with him, but nothing is going to happen between them. Of course, though, over time he starts to get to know her. He definitely starts to fall for her. He does some really sweet things to help her, not least of all getting her to even get to go and see a doctor, because her dad would never even let her go to a doctor because he was too ashamed. And so suddenly she is starting to get the help that she needs, the medication that she needs, the medical care that she needs, and Matteo is really, really attentive to those needs and make sure that she has what she needs. She also massively wins over his men, her bodyguard and everything. She's such a sweet woman, and it's so cute to see. I love the interactions between them, the build-up of their romance, and Matteo is a really, really sweet hero. So we're definitely highly recommending this one. As I've said before, the third act, conflict/breakup, was not my favourite. However, the rest of the book was so brilliant. These characters were so good. It had me smiling throughout. That although I did knock a point off for this one, I rented this one 4 stars. It could not detract from how much I enjoyed this book, and so going to this one prepared for the third act, conflict/breakup, being a little bit ridiculous, a little bit inconsistent with the characters that we, you know, get to know and love throughout the first part of this book. But once we're through the other side, then I think it has a really good ending as well, so would definitely recommend. Next up we have Beautiful Beast by Neva Altaj. This is her new book in her spin-off series from Perfectly Imperfect series. So this is the Mafia Legacy book 1, and this one is Sicilian Mafia. In fact, it's actually based in Italy, so it was really, really nice to kind of like be in a different location rather than America for a change. The hero in this one, like I said, is the head of the Sicilian Mafia, and he ends up with the heroine, who is a Russian mafia princess, and in fact is the daughter of the hero from book 1 in the Perfectly Imperfect series. So that is basically how they're connected. In addition to this being a mafia romance, it's also an age gap, forced proximity, kidnapping, captive situation, and we have a scarred hero as well. The hero in this one is Raphael. Like I said, he's the boss, he's the head of the Sicilian mafia. You know, like all good mafia men, he does some criminal activity, but he's got some legitimate business as well. And one of the big things he does, he's seriously into security, bodyguards, but also has teams of people who are assassins around the world. And so basically, not only does he install security systems, he looks after people, provides bodyguards for people, but also his teams are also extremely proficient in removing bad elements from society. And so when they get jobs to you know, assassinate someone, he sends one of his special teams to do so. The thing is, there's been a bit of a fly in the ointment recently, because there's been a hacker hacking into his systems and disrupting some of his security systems. And of course, he's not going to take this lying down. He decides to track down this hacker and have his men bring the hacker to him with the intention that he's going to torture them and kill them as punishment. Of course, what actually ends up happening is that they discover that the hacker is actually a woman. It's Vasilisa, who is, like I said, the Russian mafia princess. She really wants to work for her dad's organisation, but he's like, no, he doesn't want her having anything to do with the mafia business. In fact, he wants to her to, you know, marry someone normal, not connected to the mafia at all. But she is very resistant and really wants to work for him. She's managed to convince him though that she can go to college to do kind of like computer science sort of thing, and is very talented in the computer space, has taught herself to be a hacker, and just for funsies hacks into different systems, of one of which happened to be Raphael's. Now, she didn't do this maliciously, she wasn't you know, deliberately focused on him. Like, this is not an attack on him, it was just random attack on companies just because she could. And of course then she finds herself in a situation where she's suddenly kidnapped, taken to Sicily, and then confronted by Raphael. Of course, when Raphael realises that she's a woman, and not only that, but a very beautiful woman, and is instantly attracted to her, he's not going to be too happy with his men, because they've kind of like roughed her up a little bit on the flight over. And so he punishes them quite severely to say, you shouldn't have done that. And they were like, but you told us to bring her here. And he's like, yes, but she's a woman, so the rules are different now. The rules have completely changed. If she was a man, that would be different. We'd treat her differently, but she's a woman, so we need to be respectful. And so now he doesn't really know what to do with her, but decides that he's going to keep her captive for the while and ask her to repair the damage that she's done in his systems, and to prolong their time together. He deliberately sabotages his own company so that she has to stay longer to fix more and more of his computer issues that he's deliberately doing for himself. So I really kind of liked this one. What I also really liked about this one as well is he finds out very quickly who she is. And Vasilisa is like, once my dad finds out, you are going to be in so much trouble. My dad is going to come and get you. And of course, Raphael is not concerned about this at all. He's not frightened of a dad in any way. And in fact, he's like, I'm one of the best assassin companies in the world, and I could assassinate your dad if I wanted to, so you better toe the line, otherwise I'm going to hurt your family. And of course, Vasilisa loves her family so much, she doesn't want that to happen, so kind of toes the line. But also this is kind of the friction between them, because she's like, if you cared about me at all, you wouldn't threaten my family. But of course he holds on tighter and tighter, threatens her family more and more, and ends up pushing her away more and more. So it's kind of like this push and pull between them. Another element of this one, like I say, is that Raphael is a scarred hero. So badly scarred, in fact, that he doesn't feel that he's attractive at all. And in fact, he's had problems with women in the past where he's pretty much had to pay them to be with him, because he's so ugly that women, you know, look at him in horror and can't possibly be attracted to him. So he's very concerned at first. He really cares about Vasilisa. He wants her to be with him, but is very in a mindset where he kind of has to buy her emotions, buy her love. And so he buys all this stuff and she keeps rejecting everything, and he feels it's a rejection of him. But really what she's thinking is, I don't need all of this stuff, I just need you. And so it takes a while for him to come to the realization that Vasilisa doesn't think he's unattractive at all. In fact, she's very attracted to him, doesn't care about his scars, It takes him a long while to come to terms with that and kind of believe that it would even be possible. So I really liked that about this story as well. So next up I want to talk about The Sweetest Oblivion by Danielle, which is book 1 in the Maid series. I've just read this in the month of August and absolutely loved it. I've said before that previously I was reluctant to read it because I'd heard that book 1 wasn't as good as books 2 and 3 in the series. It was a little bit slower. Some people didn't rate it as highly, and so I really wanted to read this series, but like I say, I was kind of like putting off reading book 1 based on those reviews. However, I have to tell you that I absolutely loved this one, rated it 5 stars, would absolutely recommend, and if this is the weakest in the series, I can't wait to read books 2 and 3. Of course, this is a Mafia Romance. Of course, this is the Mafia Romance Monday, where we're talking about bosses. So our main hero in this one is Nicholas, is head of the Italian mafia, or one of the heads of one of the Italian mafias in this place. Now, he is arranged in marriage to Elena's sister. Elena is our heroine in this one. It's who ends up with Nicholas in the end. But to start off with, Nicholas is arranged in marriage to Elena's sister. And then basically what happens from here is that their families obviously meet on a regular basis, have dinner together in the lead up to the wedding, so that they can kind of, you know, join their families together, as it were, and so that they end up in a lot of social functions together. And Elena and Nicholas's chemistry is palpable. It really is. The tension between them, the sexual tension between them, the chemistry between them is palpable. Like I say, it oozes off the page. I absolutely love this one because you could really feel how much Nicholas wanted to be with her. Elena also really wanted to be with him. And then when they're encountered at these sort of parties together, they kind of like, you know, have these moments together where they interact with each other. Quiet moments where out in the alleyway, maybe while he gets a cigarette, or you know, out on the balcony when she's taking a breather. And there was these really sort of like really intimate moments between them, but also a distance between them because they know it's forbidden. He's supposed to be marrying their sister, but over time he falls in love with Elena and decides that he's going to try and engineer the situation so that he doesn't have to marry the sister and can end up with Elena instead. And so this ends up then being a bit of a forced proximity situation until eventually Elena relents. There's a lot more to the plot than that in this one, but it's the romance between this couple that I absolutely loved. Just that kind of longing and yearning and wanting to be together and trying to get into a situation where they can be together, but also just that tension between them. There's also some really great side characters in here, and some of them will obviously appear in future books, but in particular the grandma, the nonna. She was hilarious, and I always love it when there's kind of like a grandma in the story, because usually these are like older, wiser women. They've been around the Mafia families a long time, right? They know how it all works, but they see everything, they know everything, they're not stupid, and they you know, wait for the opportune moment to have their say, make their awareness known, shall we say, and also just you know, bring some humorous and fun elements. Just one example is there was this kind of evening dinner they all go to. It's very boring. Everyone's being polite and acting appropriately, shall we say, and then a fight breaks out, and suddenly Nonna is like, finally the entertainment has arrived, thank God, because I thought I was going to die of boredom at this dinner. And so it's just moments like that where I just think, you know, some of the side characters in this also were really good, so would definitely recommend. Okay, so finally my last recommendation for today is Bloodied Hands by Adelaide Forrest, and this is book 1 in the Blandy Crime Syndicate. It's a second chance romance between Matteo and Ivory, and of course Matteo is the boss of this family. Now, like I said, this is a second chance romance, so this couple actually knew each other in high school, and they were high school sweethearts. Matteo was madly in love with Ivory and she was in love with him, but basically he was the heir to this mafia family, and you know, she was not related to the mafia at all. His father was not too happy about their relationship, so he pretty much threatened Matteo and said, you know, you can't be with her anymore, you need to end the relationship, otherwise I'm going to take matters into my own hands, and remove Ivory from the situation. And so to protect Ivory, Matteo ends up breaking her heart in the most horrible of ways, because he breaks up with her in front of people, says some horrible things, really breaks her heart, but he needs to make sure that she knows that it's definitely over and she's not going to come around again, but he does it literally to protect her. And of course then she ends up heartbroken but also hating him. And then there's a 10-year gap. So this story starts 10 years after this breakup. Matty and Ivory have been separate for this whole time, but each of them still loves the other. But obviously, like I say, Ivory is still very heartbroken, kind of hates him really, and kind of never gotten over him, can't move on, but also, you know, doesn't ever want to see him again. But at the start of this book, like I say, she goes to her bank to get some money out, deposit some money, something like that. She ends up in the middle of a bank heist. And so these criminals come in, hold up the cashier and everything, and she happens to be there. Now, when the robber realises that she's one of the hostages, he freaks out and apologises and said, oh my God, I'm so sorry, please don't tell Matteo that I was here. If he asks you, say I didn't touch you, I didn't hurt you, please, sorry, and kind of leaves. She's left very, very confused, because she's like, what the hell just happened? Why is this guy scared? Why did he bring up Matteo? What's that got to do with me? And so she becomes so intrigued by this that she decides that she's finally going to confront Matteo. She goes to his house, knocks on his door basically, and said, what the hell? Why was I just in a bank heist and the guy was so scared to even let you know that I was even in the room? What the hell is going on? And now Ivory has put herself back into Matteo's crosshairs, and this time he is now the boss. His father is gone, he can make his own decisions, and he decides now she's back in his life, he isn't going to let her go. And he becomes very, very, you know, completely controlling, completely obsessed over her, and insists that they rekindle their relationship. And of course she's going to very strongly push back on this, because, you know, like I say, she doesn't trust him. He broke her heart once before. She doesn't trust that it won't happen again, but slowly and surely he kind of like forces her to go back to him. And, you know, she still does love him, still is very attracted to him, so it's not going to be too difficult for him to convince her. Now, I love Adelaide's Forrest stories on one hand because the heroes are so unhinged, and some of the things that happen in this story are crazy. On the other hand, one of the issues I have with some of her books is that the plots are so crazy that there's kind of plot holes in them, if you know what I mean. Just questionable things, like you kind of really have to make a leap in terms of your, you know, your belief, if you like, in order to make this happen. So for example, if there's a 10-year gap between the high school and now, yet the robber still knows that she shouldn't be touched, how is she still on a protected list that Matteo's going to be really upset if something happens to her? Because on the flip side, we learn that Matteo has deliberately not been keeping his eye on her. He doesn't know what's happened to her in the last 10 years. So that kind of implies, like, if he was watching her and had someone the whole time, you know, keeping an eye on her, making sure she was okay, that would make sense. But allegedly he didn't. So then it's like 10 years pass and the criminal is still, you know, recognises who she is and knows that Matteo is still upset by it. So there's some small plot holes in this story, but however, that does not take away from the enjoyment of reading this one. Like I say, Matteo is unhinged, he's obsessed with her, and he does some crazy things, a bit like Dom, S.J. Tilley, and I've spoken about him before. He does some crazy things, like if it happened in real life it would not be acceptable, but somehow these heroes make it quite endearing. And and a couple of the things he does that is, you know, obviously our heroine is not happy about is, one, he forces a tracker on her and in fact injects it into her skin forcibly, just because he is so obsessed with making sure that she's okay and safe, and if anything happens to her he'd be able to find her. And the other thing as well is that in order to keep her, he is desperate to marry her and get her pregnant, and so there's some birth control tampering that goes on in this one as well. So just letting you know that that may be a couple of triggers for you, so you might want to check your content warnings. But like I say, although it is obviously absolutely outrageous behaviour, also somehow the hero makes it endearing, and you kind of see how much he cares about her, and what he'll do, basically what lengths he's going to go to in order to make her his. And there's something about that that I really like, and yeah, as always, it's my guilty pleasure. So there we go, that is 8 romance recommendations for mafia romances that contain bosses, so the boss of a mafia organisation and a heroine that he ends up falling in love with. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me, and all that's left to say is thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye. So next up, I want to talk about the Sweetest Oblivion, the characters that we kind of, you know, in this one, this is an arranged map by Emilia Rossi. Next up then, we have another read that I read. Oh, sorry, I have just recorded 2 videos. This is my 3rd one I'm going to start today, and then I suddenly thought, oh, I didn't check my lipstick. Normally I like to check my teeth, and then I was really worried that I just spent 2 hours recording 2 previous videos with lipstick on my teeth, but I didn't see any, so I'm thinking we're okay.